Well, hello there, you lovers of long and boring videos. Here's another blah 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 Ushanka Show story about life in the Soviet Union. In today's video, we're gonna look at another unusual Soviet store chain called Albatross, where no Soviet currency was accepted. But before we begin, I would like to thank all my supporters, people who support me on patreon.com, my viewers that support Ushanka Show through the membership right here on YouTube, and all my viewers that generously tip this channel through super thanks. Thank you so much. Just in case if you missed my recent videos or you just found this channel, we covered in detail Berezka souvenirs, hard currency stores that were designed for foreign tourists. It accepted only foreign currency and was known as BS stores, Berezka souvenirs. And we learn about different type of Berezka stores that also did not accept Soviet rubles. It accepted special checks of Neshposil-Torg. It was designed for Soviet citizens that worked abroad and earned foreign currency. And as I mentioned earlier, today we're going to talk about a retail chain called Albatross, which was created specifically for the sailors. So it was located in the largest ports of the Soviet Union, cities like Riga, Kaliningrad, former Königsberg, Leningrad, current St. Petersburg, Vladivostok, Novorossiysk, Odessa. So all large Soviet ports had these stores, Albatross, which is the name of the seafaring bird. All the sailors worked for the Soviet company called Torg Mor Trans. So it's like a торговое морское транспортное агентство. So it's a trading sea, ocean, going transportation company. And here I need to read a comment from one of my viewers. There was an American equivalent for those checks, which I call monopoly money. It was called scrip, a substitute for legal tender money some corporations pay their employees in. So this is exactly what it was, scrip. Torg Mor Trans paid their sailors while they were out in the sea, out of the country, with this substitute for legal tender money. So this is exactly what's going on with the sailors working for Torg Mor Trans. While their salary was in rubles, every time they left the port, going on a trip, they were getting per diem. And per diem, since they were out of the country, was paid in a foreign currency, probably United States dollars. But of course, Soviet government didn't want to waste precious currency, so they substituted foreign currency with this scrip thing, substitute for legal tender money, which also looked like a check. But for some reason, sailors' checks people called boni. So one would be bona, and many of them will be boni. So instead of checks like cheki, for Berezka stores, the checks used for Albatross were called boni. If you remember my videos about the richest people in the Soviet Union, like waitresses or taxi drivers, I was actually planning to make videos about Soviet sailors. So today's video, we're gonna kill two birds with one stone, or as we say in Russian language, we're gonna get two rabbits with one shot. We're gonna убить двоих зайцев одним выстрелом. So we're gonna talk about Albatross retail stores and about crazy rich Soviet sailors. Fun fact, I'm a little bit related to this topic. Of course, I never worked as a sailor, but my cousin Tanya, that you see at this picture, she ended up marrying a guy also named Sergei, and his job, he was a repairman for refrigerators on the large ships. So he would be flying to like Central America, South America, whatever Soviet refrigerator ships had a problem. So he would fly there and or stay there or work there to fix the refrigeration systems. So he was getting paid this per diem in hard currency, and he was constantly bringing stuff, jeans, electronics, selling, reselling. And I remember one time I saw, it blew my mind. He had a triple cassette boombox, which some people call ghetto blaster. I think the brand was Crown, and it just blew my mind. It had, besides the radio receiver, it had 3 tapes, not 2, 3 tapes. That was so cool. So this is what I found about work and pay of a Soviet sailor. So until 1987, the standard salary, they call a klad, of the sailor first class was only 105 rubles, not much at all. But the per diem was 18% of this pay, so he was getting 18 foreign currency rubles every day while he's in sea. And of course, it depends how much are you out there. You could be gone for 6 months, and then it's slowly adding together. And of course, when you get into port, you had the right to request this foreign currency rubles so you can go and spend it on shore. Of course, some sailors never seen foreign ports. For example, sailors working on the tankers that provided so-called bunkerovka of the fishermen. So you bring a tanker to the middle of Atlantic or other oceans just to refuel the ship that does the fishing, and then you just go straight back to Soviet Union. You never stop at any ports, and that's the problem, because you can't cash out your invalutny ruble, they call it, foreign currency ruble. It's just all you can do is just take care of it when I get home. So for the sailors that could get out in foreign port, option A would be you cash out and you get a local foreign currency, local currency, and you just go out, maybe go to the bar, maybe go to a museum. I don't know if I never heard that sailors hitting the museums, so they could kind of just spend their money right there in the port. And actually, while you were in the port, you can also do some shopping, because I believe quite a few ports in Greece and other locations, when the Soviet ships stopped off, and they had specific shops that sold the goodies that were interested for the Soviet sailors, like boom boxes, jeans, of course, chewing gum, and stuff like that. Of course, the dumbest thing you could do with this invalutny ruble, foreign currency ruble, is just to exchange it for Soviet ruble, and you just pretty much, there's not much money there. But the best way to go will be to turn it in this bony, in the checks that you could go and pay a visit to the Albatross store in your home port. Once you trade your per diem to the sailors' funny money, sailors' monopoly money, you had two options. You could go to Albatross store and purchase goods there. Once again, jeans, boom boxes, foreign alcohol, other deficit items. Or you could resell your monopoly money on the black market, and rate of exchange was really good, from 10 to 15 rubles for every check. So basically your per diem was way better if you exchange it on the black market. So 1 day of per diem in C was equal pretty much to monthly salary of the Soviet sailor. Actually 2 monthly salaries, because if you had 18 checks and you do times 10 or even 15, you push in over 200 rubles. And if your basic pay was 105, so that's where the money were to resell your checks for the rubles on the black market. What I found interesting, that Albatross stores were controlled entry stores, so you're supposed to have a special ID to show that you allowed access to that store, so random people just couldn't walk right into it and gawk on items, stuff like that. You should have an ID in order to get in that store. I'm not sure if you guys watched my video about popular foreign jeans in the Soviet Union, and some of those strange brands that were mega popular in the USSR was called Montana, and they were made in Hamburg, Germany. And I was surprised, like, why in all the places would you pick Hamburg? And there was a Polish guy who set up a factory, and I found my answer while I was researching for today's video. Apparently, Hamburg was a popular destination for the Soviet ship to stop and for the sailors to shop. They had those special shops, and this Polish guy figured out that he could make jeans for Soviet customers, for Soviet sailors. So that's how Montana jeans became popular. Soviet sailors were buying them in Hamburg and then bringing them to the Soviet Union and reselling them. And they trying just to maximize those monies, those per diems. And that's one of the way of doing it, was buying and reselling jeans. And as you can imagine, every Albatross store and every port was like a magnet for all kind of criminal activity. So there were people hanging around the stores all day long, trading, speculating in the sailors' currency, buying and selling this bony paper money. And I said rate was from 10 to 15 rubles. If you snatch some drunk sailor, you might get a really good deal. One guy wrote down in the comment section about the stores that the girls that worked at the store were covered with gold, like every ring, earrings, had a expensive perfume. Foreign imported lipstick was more red as the flag of the Soviet Union. It was so bright. It was brighter than red of the Soviet Union flag. I thought it was hilarious. Some of the former sailors recalled that there was also additional pay. So while you're on the ship, you can get additional checks from your captain for jobs that not part of your everyday routine. For example, like cleaning the ship, washing tanks. Said, for example, they had Soviet tankers moving sheep fat from Australia to Pakistan. I was kind of like flabbergasted. I never knew that it was actually business of selling fat, sheep fat from from Australia to Pakistan. So he said that was a nasty job. After you brought that fat, they had to clean their tanker, and that's how they could get additional pay. And of course, Albatross stores had no silly matryoshka, no souvenirs. It was mostly foreign goods, jeans, Japanese electronics, boom boxes, radios, and such, imported cigarettes, good alcohol, foreign alcohol, candy, stuff like that. So people were willing to buy sailors' currency to get access to those goods. And of course, there were probably ways for the salespeople in the store to do their own thing. There probably was some shrinkage. There probably was some allowance for breaking bottles. So they had the way of also making money while working at those stores. And while I was scrolling through the comments, people were talking about this type of job, and mostly children. They were talking about their fathers. Some actually were working as sailors back in the 70s and 80s. So generally, they all were like, yeah, we had a really good life. We made a lot of money. Yes, we had to do things that not really legal or somewhat legal. We had to, speculate. We had to smuggle stuff into the country. We had to smuggle, vodka and stuff out of the country. So everyone was trying to maximize their earnings, having access, having ability to leave Soviet Union and come back. So generally, they all were doing great. They all had cars. They had nice goods that most Soviet people never had. So there was this little island of coolness among the sailors. So that was really, definitely it's a hard job to be away from a family for months. But I found one guy said, hey, I was 25-year-old and already had 30,000 rubles in the bank. And my parents, two workers, both worked in 20 years. They managed to save only 5,000 rubles. And that kid, just because he was a sailor, he managed to save. And he was spending money, having a good time probably too. He managed to save 30,000 rubles. A huge amount of money. So just like with waitresses, taxi drivers, people who work at the grocery stores in the Soviet Union, sailors also had a decent life, not because of their salary, but because they had access to the goods that other people really wanted. And then came Mikhail Gorbachev and destroyed their perfect world with his perestroika and glasnost. Well, my friends, it's all I have for you today. Once again, I hope you learned something new. Please don't forget to like this video. If you have any questions or comments, please use the comment section. We'll talk to you soon. До свидания. Goodbye.
Sergey wrote a book based on diaries he made when he was first in the United States. And as I understand, this is just volume one, right? That's correct. He's going to have multiple volumes coming out. Well, I said, well, since Sergey is kind enough to come up and speak with us, I bought the book. I said, I might as well read this. I read this in one sitting. 2 hours, 2.5 hours. I just couldn't put it down. It was so fascinating because your writing is very compelling for one, and his story is very interesting for two. It's really interesting. You know, we've lived here our whole lives. We don't have that perspective. It's just so interesting to hear someone else's perspective about what we take for granted. So I hope you really tune in and listen to what he has to say. It's a very interesting, very informed perspective. Sergey is not a historian. He's an electrical engineer by trade, but I find that he has a depth of understanding on history, economics, culture. So just a very observant fellow and a great storyteller. So like